Imagine waking up in a world where nobody will help you, where every stranger just points a camera at your face while masked killers hunt you down. No memory, no escape, and every step you take is part of something far more twisted than you could ever imagine. This is not just survival, this is punishment. I came to on this ragged old couch in a place I didn't recognize. My head felt like it had been slammed in a car door. There's this deep, pounding ache behind my eyes, and everything around me was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but eerie quiet. The kind that makes your skin crawl. The air was cold, almost like I'd woken up inside a hospital, but the room sure didn't look like one. I slowly lifted my hand and touched the side of my forehead. There was a small bandage stuck there. No blood, but it throbbed like hell. I had no idea how I got it, no clue where I was or how I'd ended up on that couch. My mind was blank, just this fog I couldn't shake. I sat up, trying to get my bearings. The room was dim and dusty. The windows were covered in grime, barely letting in any light. A bulky old television sat in the corner, crackling with static. On its screen was this weird symbol, a white triangle with a few jagged lines poking out, flickering and twitching like it was broken. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what it meant. A warning? A message? A memory? Nothing came to mind. I stood up slowly. My legs wobbled underneath me like I hadn't used them in days. On the nearby table, I noticed a photo, a picture of a young girl. She was smiling, blonde hair, soft eyes, just radiating sweetness. As soon as I saw her, something twisted in my gut. My chest tightened. I didn't know her, but part of me felt like I did. Was she family? My daughter? I stumbled to the door and pushed it open. Outside, the sky was a dull gray, the kind you see before a storm. Everything was dead quiet. The street was lined with houses and parked cars, but there wasn't a soul in sight. No traffic, no birds, just nothing. Then, I spotted someone. There was a man standing on a front porch a few houses down. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, holding up a cell phone, filming me like I was some kind of freak. I called out to him, maybe for help, maybe just for a sign I wasn't crazy, but he didn't respond. He just kept pointing that phone right at me. A woman in a nearby window did the same thing, then another and another. People came out of nowhere, all of them holding up their phones, silently recording me. Their eyes were blank, their faces lifeless. None of them said a word. And then I heard it, the sound of an engine. I turned and saw something out of a nightmare. A person wearing a monstrous mask, carrying a shotgun, stepped into the street. They didn't yell or say a single word. They just raised the weapon and pulled the trigger. Boom! The blast missed me, but it was close enough to snap me onto the fog. I ran like my life depended on it, because it did. I tore through the street like a bat out of hell. My legs were still unsteady, my breath short and ragged, but fear gave me power. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from that masked freak with the shotgun. Every instinct I had screamed at me to move. I cut across a yard, then scrambled over a wooden fence that creaked under my weight. Behind me, I could hear steady footsteps and the crunch of boots on gravel. The masked man was not running. He didn't have to. He walked with this calm, steady pace, like he already knew how the story would end, like this was just a game to him. I shouted for help, screamed for someone to do something, but the people just stood there with their phones pointed at me. They were like statues, not talking, not moving, just filming, like I was some circus act they had come to watch. No one tried to help. No one flinched. I could see their screens catching every second of my fear. I ducked behind a shed and crouched there trying to catch my breath. My heart was pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. I peeked around the corner. He was still coming. That mask, it looked like something out of a horror movie. His silence made it worse. There was no threat, no demand, just the cold presence of someone whose only goal was to hurt me. I kept moving, darting through alleyways, hopping over fences, dodging garbage bins and broken down bikes. My feet hurt, my hands were scraped, my clothes were torn and damp with sweat, but I kept running. I had no idea who I was or why this was happening, but something deep in my bones told me that if he caught me, it would be over. Eventually, I found others. 2 people, crouched low behind a pile of pallets behind an old shop. They looked just as terrified as I felt. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes and wild hair, grabbed my arm and pulled me down beside her. "Name's Jem," she whispered. "They're hunting you too?" I nodded, barely able to speak. She glanced around, eyes alert. "They're not real. The people, the ones with the phones, they're under some kind of signal. That symbol you saw on the screens, it messes with their heads, makes them forget who they are, makes them follow orders." I didn't understand. My head was spinning. What signal? That triangle, the symbol, it's everywhere. It controls them, turns them into puppets. But we're still clear, for now, and we can stop it. How? We blow up the transmitter. I stared at her like she was nuts. Blowing up something? That sounded insane, but then again, nothing about this place made sense. "Tower's in the forest," Jem said. "Place is called White Bear. We make it there, we kill the signal, and this all ends." I looked at her. I looked at the other man hiding beside her, who had not said a word, and I realized I had no better plan. So I nodded, and we ran.
We moved fast, sticking to the shadows, avoiding open streets where the watchers stood with their phones like statues in a graveyard. The world felt like it had gone mad. Storefronts were shattered. Cars sat empty with doors hanging open. There was no traffic, no animals, no wind. Just silence, broken by the occasional distant cheer or burst of static. Jem led the way. She had this fierce energy, like she had been through this before. Maybe she had. Maybe we all had in some way. She held a broken metal pipe in one hand and moved like she meant business. The other guy, I never got his name, kept quiet. He stuck close behind, his eyes scanning every rooftop and alley like he was expecting something to leap out at us. As we passed through a dried-up park, we saw them again, the masked ones. There were 2 of them this time. One had a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. The other held some kind of electric prod. They were standing near the swings, waiting, as if they knew we would come this way. We ducked down behind a rusted slide. Jem cursed under her breath. "They are getting closer to the tower," she muttered. "The closer we get, the worse it gets, like they're protecting it." The plan was simple. Avoid them, keep moving, find the transmitter tower in the woods. But nothing about this felt simple. It felt like every step we took deeper into this world pulled us further from reality. I still didn't know who I was. Not really. I knew fear, I knew confusion, and I knew that girl in the photo, Jemima, meant something painful. We crept around the park's edge and made our way down an overgrown trail behind an old diner. Inside, it looked like time had stopped. Half-eaten food still sat on plates. A fan spun slowly overhead, clicking with each turn. I stared at the booth in the corner, half expecting someone to be sitting there, sipping coffee like none of this was happening. Jem grabbed my arm. "Keep moving. Do not get stuck in memories. That is how they catch you." We kept going. Eventually, we reached an abandoned gas station at the edge of town. The forest loomed behind it, dark and still. It felt like the edge of the world, like once we crossed that line, there would be no turning back. We stopped to catch our breath, hiding behind the old gas pumps. Jem looked at me. "You ready for this?" she asked. I wasn't sure how to answer. I wasn't ready. I didn't understand what we were fighting or what we were running toward, but I nodded anyway. "I just want it to stop," I said. She nodded. "Then let us finish it." And with that, we pushed open the cracked door of the station and stepped inside. That was our first mistake. The second we stepped inside the gas station, I knew something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like it hadn't been breathed in for years. Dust floated in the beams of gray light breaking through the shattered windows. Shelves were knocked over, glass crunched beneath our feet. There was a strong smell of fuel and something else, something metallic, sharp, blood. We moved cautiously through the aisles. Jem had her pipe raised and ready. The quiet man behind us held a piece of broken wood, gripping it like a bat. I stayed between them, heart thumping so loud I thought they might hear it. Then we heard the creak. It came from the back room. We froze. Jem motioned for silence and crept forward. I followed, every nerve in my body screaming. We passed a cooler full of spoiled drinks and came to a half-open door. Inside, in the dim light, stood another masked figure. This one wore a jagged, handmade mask, like it had been carved from scrap metal. He held a huge knife in one hand, long, curved, stained. He was tall and still, like a statue. And then he moved, fast. He lunged without a word, slashing through the air. Jem jumped back and the blade sliced through the empty space where she had just been. The quiet guy swung his board, hitting the attacker's arm, but it barely slowed him down. This man, or whatever he was, moved like he had nothing to lose. The fight was chaos. The gas station was too small, too tight. I grabbed a can from a shelf and threw it. It bounced off the wall, useless. The masked man turned to me next. He came at me with that knife, and I ducked behind the counter just in time. Jem screamed something. I could not hear what. I crawled along the floor, looking for anything to defend myself with. My hand landed on a fire extinguisher. I pulled it out, stood up, and sprayed. The blast of white foam hit the masked man square in the face. He stumbled. Jem took her chance and swung the pipe with both hands. It connected with a sickening crack. The man dropped. He did not move. I stood there, gasping, heart pounding, hands shaking. "Is he dead?" I asked. Jem stepped forward and kicked the knife away. "Does it matter?" she said coldly. We did not wait to find out. We grabbed what supplies we could, a flashlight, some water, a first aid kit, and ran. Out the back door, past the fuel tanks, into the thick trees beyond. The forest swallowed us. The sky above was gray, but the woods were darker. The tower had to be somewhere ahead. I could feel it now, a strange pull in my chest, like gravity. We walked deeper into the trees, silent, bruised, afraid. Whatever this place was, it was not real. Or maybe it was too real. And I still didn't know the worst of it. Not yet.
We kept moving through the forest. the weight of the silence pressing down on us. The trees were tall and thick, their branches blocking out the sky like a dark ceiling. The air smelled damp and earthy, but it carried something else too, a faint electrical hum, almost like the air itself was buzzing with tension. Jem was leading, eyes sharp and alert. The quiet man stayed close behind me, his face unreadable. I still hadn't caught his name. I felt like I was chasing shadows, running after answers I didn't have. Then Jem stopped suddenly and held up her hand. "There," she whispered. Ahead through the thick trees, I saw it, a tall metal tower, its frame rusty but still standing proud against the gloomy sky. Antennas and wires jutted out in every direction. It looked like something from a nightmare, cold, cruel, and lifeless. "That's the transmitter," Jem said quietly. "It's sending the signal that controls everything." I stared at the tower, heart pounding. All this time, I thought I was just running for my life. But this was something bigger. "Why do they want me?" I asked. Jem looked at me, eyes hard. "Because you're the key. Because you're connected." I didn't understand. "Connected how?" I said. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a faded photo. It was the same picture I had seen on the table back in that empty room, the little blonde girl, smiling. "Her name was Jemima," Jem said softly. "She was killed here. You were there." I shook my head, confused and scared. "No, I wasn't." "Yes, you were," Jem said, her voice low but firm. "You filmed it. You did nothing to stop it." My breath caught in my throat. The pieces started to fall apart inside my mind, but they didn't fit right. I felt sick, like I was standing on the edge of something dark and cold. "And now," I whispered. "Now what?" Jem's eyes darkened. "Now they use you to punish you. They wipe your memory every day, put you through this hell over and over. It's not justice, it's a show." I looked away from the tower, overwhelmed. The watchers, the hunters, the endless chase, none of it was real. Or maybe it was real in the worst possible way. I was trapped, and every day I had to live this nightmare all over again. All over again. The forest was quiet, except for the crunch of our footsteps on dry leaves and twigs. Every sound seemed sharper here, as if the trees themselves were listening. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting that masked hunter to pop out from behind a tree. But for now, it was just us, creeping deeper into the woods. I still couldn't shake the weight of what Jem had told me, that I wasn't some innocent victim running from danger. I was part of this twisted story, connected in a way that made my skin crawl. The idea that I had watched a little girl die and done nothing was unbearable. And that the whole nightmare was meant to punish me, it was like I had stepped into a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Jem was walking ahead, tense and silent. The quiet man stayed close behind me, his face unreadable. I tried to focus on the path, but my mind was racing. Who was I before all this? Who was I really? I asked Jem again. "How do they wipe my memory? How does it happen every day?" She didn't answer right away. After a long pause, she said, "There's a system. They reset you like a broken machine. Every night, your memories get erased. They start fresh, like you're a blank slate. Then they send you back into the same nightmare again and again." "Why would they do that?" I whispered. "Because this isn't about freedom," Jem said bitterly. "It's about punishment, control, entertainment." I thought about the people with their phones, watching me like I was an animal trapped in a cage. The crowd that cheered and laughed when I screamed. It wasn't real justice. It was some sick kind of show. A sick game that made me the star and the victim at the same time. My hands shook. How long has this been going on? How long have I been trapped? Jem looked at me with sympathy.
Too long. We all lose track of time here. The memories get fuzzy, but the pain never goes away. I swallowed hard. The forest seemed darker now, shadows closing in like hands reaching out. What if I refuse to play? If I try to fight it? She shook her head. You don't get a choice. They control everything. The hunters, the watchers, even your own mind. Resistance only makes the punishment worse. A cold wind swept through the trees. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling small and broken. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run away from this place. But there was nowhere to go. No escape. We're almost there, Jem said quietly. Pointing ahead, the transmitter tower loomed through the branches, taller and more menacing than before. Its metal frame creaked softly in the wind, like a beast ready to roar. I stared at it, the symbol of my torment, the source of the signal that controlled everyone, the watchers, the hunters, the endless nightmare I was trapped inside. For a moment, I let myself imagine what it would be like to destroy it, to end the pain and confusion, to finally be free. But deep down, I knew it would be that simple. Because this was no ordinary prison. This was a new kind of hell, and I was right in the middle of it.
The closer we got to that transmitter tower, the heavier the air felt. It was like the forest itself was watching us, waiting to see what we'd do next. The trees grew thicker, their branches tangled together so tightly it was almost like walking through a wall of shadows. My mind was a mess. I kept trying to hold on to pieces of myself, who I was before all this, but they slipped away like sand through my fingers. All I could remember were the moments of fear, confusion, and that burning feeling of being hunted. Jem didn't say much as we walked, but I could tell she was tense too. Her grip on that rusty pipe tightened every time a twig snapped or a crow cawed somewhere in the distance. She kept glancing behind us like she expected someone to pop out of nowhere. We stopped by a clearing, and I finally let myself catch my breath. The tower stood in the middle, looming over everything like a giant spider web. Its metal bones stretched into the sky, cables snapping in the wind like twisted vines. "This is it," Jem said quietly. I looked at her, fear and hope mixing inside me. "If we destroy that thing, will it all stop? The memories, the hunting, everything?" Jem's eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. "I don't know, but it's the only chance we've got." We made a plan there in the clearing. Jem would take the lead, I'd cover the rear, and the quiet man would watch our flanks. The forest around us felt alive with danger. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made my heart jump. Suddenly, I heard a rustle behind the trees. I froze. Jem raised her pipe, and the quiet man shifted, ready to strike. Out stepped a group of people, not masked, but their eyes were blank and glassy. The Watchers. They held phones, recording us without a word. Their faces were empty, like they were trapped in some kind of trance. One of them stepped forward and raised his finger to his lips, a warning not to fight. I wanted to shout, to tell them to snap out of it, but Jem shook her head. "They're slaves to the signal," she said. "Don't waste your breath." The Watchers parted, letting us through. The feeling of being watched made my skin crawl. Their cameras followed every step we took. We pushed on, stepping over roots and broken branches. The tower grew bigger with every step. The humming from it was louder now, almost like a low growl in the back of my mind. My head started to ache again. Memories flickered like broken film in my brain. Faces I couldn't place. Voices calling out. Screams, laughter, confusion. I wanted to run, to hide, to scream. But I kept moving, because maybe, just maybe this was the moment everything changed. We were right under that tower now. The metal creaked and groaned like it was alive, some giant beast standing guard over the nightmare we were trapped in. The hum of the transmitter filled my ears, vibrating through my bones. It was so loud it felt like it was trying to tear my mind apart. Jem motioned for us to stop. She pointed to a small door at the base of the tower, half hidden behind twisted cables and broken machinery. "This is it," she whispered. I swallowed hard. My hands were shaking so badly I thought I might drop whatever I was holding. This was it. The moment of truth. We moved quietly inside. The air was thick with dust and electricity. The room was filled with blinking lights, wires snaking everywhere, and a huge control panel covered with buttons and switches. I had no idea how any of it worked, but I could tell it was important. Jem went straight to the panel, fingers flying over the controls. She muttered under her breath about frequencies and signals, words I barely understood. The screens flickered and went black. Then, one by one, light started to dim. I could feel the power draining from the room. A strange silence fell over us, heavier than before. And then I heard the footsteps. Not one set, many, coming from the hallway outside. "We're not alone," Jem hissed, her eyes wide. I grabbed a pipe lying on the floor, ready to fight if I had to. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the metal walls. Then the door burst open. A flood of masked hunters poured in, moving like ghosts through the shadows. Their weapons glinted in the weak light. There was no time to think, only to fight or die. Jem swung her pipe with all her strength, hitting one attacker square in the face. The quiet man struck another, throwing him into a pile of cables. I backed against the wall, swinging wildly at whoever got too close. The room was chaos. Metal clanged against metal, shouts, growls, and the crack of weapons filled the air. I felt my adrenaline spike, my breath coming in short gasps. But then something strange happened. The masked hunters hesitated. Their movements slowed. Their weapons wavered. And then one by one, they dropped to their knees, motionless. I looked at Jem, confused. "The signal, it's weakening," she said, breathless. "We're breaking it." My heart pounded with hope. Maybe this nightmare was ending. Maybe I could finally be free. But then from the shadows, a voice echoed. "Not so fast." And I knew this fight was far from over.
The voice came from the shadows, cold and calm, like someone who knew every secret of this place. I couldn't see where it was coming from, but it filled the room like ice crawling up my spine. Jem spun around, pipe raised, eyes searching. The quiet man tensed beside me, ready for whatever was coming. Out of the darkness stepped a figure, tall, dressed in black, wearing a mask that looked like a skull painted on his face. His presence sucked the air from the room. "I see you're trying to destroy my masterpiece," he said, voice low and mocking. "But this game, it doesn't end how you think." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" He smiled behind his mask, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm the one who built all this. The tower, the signal, the justice you've been running from. I control everything here. You are nothing but a player in my show." My heart hammered. Why? Why would you do this?" "Revenge," he said simply, "and punishment. You see, Victoria, that's your real name, isn't it? You filmed a crime, did nothing to stop it. You let a little girl die while you watched through a camera lens. I gave you a chance to pay for that." I stared at him numb. The pieces clicked into place. The pain, the fear, the endless nightmare. He took a step closer. "Every day, your memory is wiped clean. You relive the hunt, the terror, the pain. It's not justice, it's theater, but it's punishment all the same." Jem growled, "You're sick." He laughed. "Maybe, but I'm also in control. And you're just a pawn." I looked at Jem, then the quiet man. We were trapped in someone else's twisted story. The watchers, the hunters, the endless cycle of fear. It was all a show for this man. I felt rage rise inside me. "This ends now." He raised a hand. "Not yet. You have one last part to play." Suddenly, the floor beneath us shook. The tower's humming grew louder, and the lights flickered wildly. "Welcome to the final act," he said, stepping back into the shadows. "Let's see if you survive." The door slammed shut behind him. We were trapped. No way out. Only the nightmare ahead. The door slammed shut with a thunderous bang that echoed through the metal room. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. The sound was final. No going back. No second chances. The towering transmitter hummed louder, like some beast waking up, ready to roar. Jem cursed under her breath, gripping her rusty pipe tighter. The quiet man scanned every shadow, every corner, like we were surrounded by enemies. "We've got to find a way out," I said, voice shaking, "before those hunters come back." Jem shook her head. "No time. The signal's destabilizing everything. The whole place is falling apart." That's when the ground started to tremble beneath our feet. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the lights flickered like a dying star. Wires sparked, sending little bursts of electricity into the air. I felt panic rising, raw, cold panic as the reality hit me. We were inside a ticking time bomb. Every second we stayed, the closer we got to disaster. Suddenly, the control panel beeped and flashed a red warning. Jem leaned in, eyes narrowing. "It's going to blow," she whispered. "We have to stop it," I said, swallowing hard. Jem's hands moved fast, pushing buttons and flipping switches, but nothing worked. The machine seemed to have its own mind, fighting back. Then, the lights went out completely. We were plunged into darkness. The only sound was the low hum of the tower, growing louder, deeper, more threatening. I reached out, hands trembling, trying to find Jem and the quiet man in the black. A shadow moved. Something cold brushed my arm. I screamed. A shotgun blast echoed in the darkness. I hit the floor, heart pounding. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. "Stay down," Jem hissed. I could hear footsteps running, the masked hunters closing in fast. They moved like ghosts, silent and deadly. My mind raced. We were trapped, surrounded, and running out of time. Suddenly,
A voice crackled over a speaker somewhere in the darkness. End of the line. Game over. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Was this really the end? No, I refused to believe it. I had to fight, had to survive, because if this was a show, I was done playing their game. The darkness wrapped around us like a thick blanket. I could barely see my own hand in front of me, but I could hear everything. Footsteps, breathing, the faint scrape of metal. The hunters were close, moving like shadows themselves, hunting the prey that I had become. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I fumbled around, searching for something, anything to defend myself. My hands hit cold metal. A pipe? Yes, I grabbed it, gripping it tight, trying to calm the shaking in my body. Jem whispered from somewhere nearby, "Stay close, don't make a sound." We edged through the blackness, every second a battle of nerves. Then I heard a low growl, a snarling sound from one of the hunters. I swung the pipe wildly, connecting with something hard, a grunt, a crash. The fight had started. I fought like I never had before, swinging, dodging, lunging. The pipe hit a mask, cracked a helmet. I ducked just in time to avoid a blow. Somewhere Jem was shouting, a fierce battle cry that gave me strength. But there were too many of them. They came at us like waves, relentless and cruel. I took a hit to my side. Pain exploded, but I pushed through it. This was no ordinary fight. It was survival. Suddenly, the humming in the room changed, deeper, slower, like a countdown. The tower was seconds from collapse. Jem yelled, "We have to finish this now!" We fought our way to the control panel, battered and bloody. Jem slammed her hand down on the big red button, the one that would destroy the transmitter. Lights flickered back on, bright and harsh. The hunters froze, their movements jerky and confused. The tower shuddered violently. I could feel the ground shake beneath my feet. A blast rocked the room. Dust and sparks flew everywhere. Then, silence. We stood there, gasping for breath, watching as the tower's lights died out one by one. For a moment, I thought it was over. But then, a screen flickered to life, and the voice came back. "Game's not over yet, Victoria." I clenched my fists. The nightmare wasn't done with me, but neither was I.
The screen's glow cast eerie shadows across the room as the voice echoed again, cold and unyielding. "Victoria, you think breaking the tower changes anything? You're still trapped, still part of the show. The story isn't finished." My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stand tall. "I'm done being your pawn." The voice chuckled darkly. "Oh no, you're about to take the center stage for the last time, the final act. This time, you decide how it ends." Suddenly, the walls around us started shifting, panels sliding open to reveal new rooms, cages, strange machinery, screens displaying twisted images of my past. I swallowed hard. What is this place? Jem's eyes narrowed. "A prison for your mind." I felt a chill. The memories I'd lost started flooding back. Flashes of a courtroom, screams, the girl's face, the murder I'd filmed and ignored. The voice spoke again, softer this time, almost coaxing. "Do you want to remember or keep running in circles?" I closed my eyes. The pain was overwhelming, but I had to face it. When I opened them, I saw Jem looking at me with fierce determination. "Together," she said, "we'll end this once and for all." The quiet man stepped forward, pulling a small device from his pocket, a remote maybe. "This controls the system. We use it, we shut this place down." I nodded. Hope sparked inside me. But then, the cages began to close. The walls creaked, and a cold air rushed in. "We don't have much time," Jem warned. With every second, the nightmare pressed harder. I took a deep breath. The final act was here, and this time, I was ready. The moment the cages started sliding shut, my heart raced faster than ever. The cold air rushed through the room like a warning. Time was running out, and whatever this place was, it didn't want us to leave. Jem didn't hesitate. She grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the control panel. The quiet man followed close behind, his face set in grim determination. "This device," he said, holding up the remote, "it's our last shot. We use it to shut down the whole system. It's all connected. The memories, the signal, everything." I looked at the buttons, the wires, the blinking lights. It all seemed so complicated. But Jem just nodded at me. It was my turn. I took a deep breath and pressed the biggest button on the remote. For a moment, nothing happened. Then alarms started blaring, loud and sharp. Red lights flashed everywhere. The walls trembled and the ground shook beneath our feet. The system was fighting back. "We did it!" Jem shouted over the noise. "It's collapsing." But the voice, that cold, mocking voice, boomed through the speakers again. "You think it's that easy? You're breaking my prison, but you can't break me." Suddenly, the room went dark. The lights died. The only thing left was the glowing symbol, the triangle with jagged lines pulsing like a heartbeat. I felt a wave of fear crash over me. The walls seemed to close in, but I wasn't going to give up. I stepped forward, eyes fixed on that symbol. "This ends now." The cage doors clanged open. Freedom was within reach, but was I ready to face what waited outside? The cage doors clanged open, the sound echoing like a distant promise of freedom. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to step forward. The air outside the cages was cold and sharp, like the edge of a knife slicing through the fog of confusion that had clouded my mind for so long. Jem stayed close, her eyes fierce and steady, the quiet man right behind us. The room was still shaking, bits of debris falling from the ceiling, sparks flying from broken wires. The tower's hum had changed, slower now, like a dying heartbeat. I glanced at the glowing triangle symbol, pulsing dimly, its jagged lines twisting and writhing like a living thing. It was the source of all the control, all the fear. Destroying it had weakened the nightmare, but something told me it hadn't ended completely. We moved down a narrow hallway, walls lined with screens. On each, images flickered, moments from my life, flashes of memory I had lost, twisted and broken by this place. Faces I barely recognized. A courtroom, a little girl's smiling face, the day everything changed. The weight of it hit me hard. I was not just a victim, I was part of this story, a story I had forgotten, erased every day, only to relive the terror again and again. As we rounded a corner, the hallway opened into a large room. There, standing in the center, was a figure shrouded in shadow. It was the man with the skull mask, the creator of this nightmare. He smiled, but it was cold, empty. "Welcome back, Victoria. You've done well to come this far." I clenched my fists, fighting the wave of anger rising inside me. "This ends now." He laughed. "You think you can escape the truth so easily? The story isn't finished." Suddenly, the screens around the room flickered to life, showing scenes I couldn't believe. The girl, Jemima, smiling and alive. The courtroom, the moments before the tragedy. The man stepped forward, voice soft but deadly. "You were supposed to save her, but you didn't. You watched, and that is why you're here. To pay the price." Tears welled up in my eyes. The memory was crushing, the guilt unbearable. But beneath it all, a new strength grew. "I won't be your prisoner anymore." Jem stepped forward, raising her pipe. The quiet man moved to flank the creator. The final battle was about to begin. The air in that room was thick with tension, every second dragging like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The man in the skull mask stood there, calm and cold, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Maybe he hadn't expected us to get this far. Jem tightened her grip on her pipe, her eyes burning with fierce determination. The quiet man positioned himself beside her, ready for whatever came next. I swallowed hard, feeling my own fear and anger boiling inside me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my mind, and ending this nightmare once and for all. Without warning, the man lunged forward, his movements quick and precise. Jem swung her pipe, and it connected with a sharp crack that echoed through the room. The quiet man tackled the man's legs, sending him sprawling to the floor. I rushed forward, grabbing a loose metal rod from the ground. The fight was chaotic. Sounds of crashing, grunts, and heavy breathing filled the air. Every second felt like a lifetime as we struggled to overpower the creator of this twist in hell. The screens around us flickered, showing flashes of my memories. The courtroom, the girl, Jemima, the endless cycles of terror and pain. I focused on those images, letting them fuel my resolve. Finally, with a final, powerful blow, we pinned the man down. He looked up at me, eyes wide with something like fear. "This ends now," I said firmly. The tower's hum faded, the power draining from the room. The glowing triangle on the wall shattered like glass, its light dying out for good. I could feel the weight lifting off my chest, the endless fear, the confusion, the pain. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. The man lay still, defeated. Jem smiled, exhausted, but victorious. The quiet man nodded. "You're free, Victoria." I looked around, at the broken walls and shattered screens. The nightmare was finally behind me. But more than that, I had found myself again. I wasn't just a prisoner or a pawn. I was someone who had fought back, someone who had survived. And now, I was ready to live.